What is going on, YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the fourth album by Paul Wall. Basically, this album is called Fast Life, and it came out in the spring of 2009. So Paul Wall had two big commercial albums in the mid-late 2000s with The People's Champ and then Get Money, Stay True. But The People's Champ was seen as the more massive one, had bigger hits like Break 'Em Off or They Don't Know, and then They Don't Know, and then Sitting Sideways, and then Get Money, Stay True kind of was a good album. I definitely enjoyed that album. I reviewed it several years ago, but the concept about it was it just didn't quite hit as heavily as like the breakout kind of Houston year of success in 2005 that a lot of those artists had. But I do like this album. It's definitely a lot more low key, where Paul Wall was starting to cross over into like Tech Nine and Chris Calico. It was kind of where Paul Wall was starting to cross over into Tech Nine and Chris Calico kind of territory and Baby Bash territory and some of that type of stuff, where his singles weren't necessarily going to chart, but they were underground hits and that type of stuff. And that's kind of where Paul Wall, he had a good valve of, I would definitely say that Paul Wall had a good valve of this area just being able to do. I mean, after these couple albums, after Heart of a Champion from 2010 and then Fast Life from 2009, he crossed over into even further low key kind of era, which is just too bad that Paul Wall's 15 minutes of fame just did not last longer than it did, just because he is a capable lyricist and he has more than a handful of hits to his name. I definitely think he could fill out like a greatest hits album, maybe not with number ones, but with good songs. I would definitely say he has no problem with filling an album of such things out. But it's just kind of the concept that, kind of like what happened with 50 Cent, Paul Wall's limelight time just kind of got shortened pretty quickly, and I just don't necessarily know why that was. I mean, that's just kind of the concept. But this is a pretty good album. It's definitely above average. It's going to get a decently high score. It's not going to get a 10, but it's going to get pretty high of a score, I would have to say. It's got some real good bops on here. It's just a compact kind of bruiser of an album. Had four singles on here, even though I don't like all four of them. There's just some real good stuff on here. It's a good taste of Texas, especially after Texas just wasn't in the spotlight as much after 2005, 2006, 2007, which that kind of happened with a lot of artists. I mean, like that kind of happened with a lot of Texas artists. Like Mike Jones had problems dropping his second album, The Voice, or like the American Dream album, and then like Bun B's second album didn't hit as heavily as like Trill, the first one, did. And, just overall stuff kind of happened across that territory as far as some of that went. Chameleonaire's second album didn't hit quite as heavily, stuff like that. So it's just kind of the concept that I do like this Paul Wall album quite a bit. If you don't know about it and you don't remember it that well, it's definitely a pretty good highlight. I do recommend this Paul Wall album quite a bit. It's got a good chock full of songs on here. He definitely has some fun. It's the same thing that kind of happened with Heart of a Champion, where he does have some quality cuts on here for just stepping out and kind of having a good time. Because this album is brief and compact, it doesn't have oodles and oodles of ones, I would have to say, but it definitely has enough to be able to talk about just the fact that it does have a good satiary kind of amount, just to be able to say that there is some good stuff on here. This is kind of the concept where there are like a handful of kind of more down tempo and kind of lot more thought provoking type songs that are just a different pitch for Paul Wall, just in concerns like a compact album. But there is a good chalk amount of songs that showcase Paul Wall's kind of sitting sideways, and there are a good assortment of songs that show off Paul Wall's kind of craziness on songs like Sitting Sideways and They Don't Know with Bun B and some of those type ones, and Sip in the Bar and some of those type moments. Definitely has some of those moments. So I would have to say, in terms of the singles, there were four of them. So there were four singles on this album. I'm going to talk about some of these. So the first single was Busybody, which came out in late 2008, a few months before the album came out. So Busybody is a pretty sparkly kind of dance club hit, just an easy cut to kind of get loose to. And it's just Paul Wall and like a Wipe Me Down type song by Lil Boozy and Fox and Webby and some of those type cats. This beat, Busybody, is produced by Mouse on the Track, who's a typical producer for like Boozy and Webby and Fox and some of those type casts. It just really feels like a Paul Wall version of a song that Webby or Lil Boozy would do, something like that. It's just an overall kind of hit. Definitely like this one. Has a lot of jive kind of energy. It's just a very overall sparkly kind of dance cut that just has like a lot of flash towards it. It's an easy kind of highlight. Good song to get some women dancing to and that does stuff. Just an easy kind of hit for having that kind of jive as far as that kind of actively goes. It's probably one of the most sparky kind of songs on here, I would have to say. Easy kind of highlight for just a great time and just the concept of some weekend nightlife. Lemon Drop is the second single, and this is a pretty good follow up to like Busybody as far as like a hit single. I mean, the hook is not quite as definitive and quite as catchy overall as Busybody, but I do feel like it's a pretty nice one. It's decent enough. It has Baby Bash on here, who definitely was kind of quiet around this time, and it's just kind of interesting just because Paul Wall was kind of becoming more in the underground territory. So this getting this kind of song is a hit, but it just kind of I think I want to say that there's a music video released from it, but I just don't know why this song didn't chart higher. I mean, Busybody did not even enter the Billboard 100, so that was kind of like a rap and R&B charts only kind of hit. Lemon Drop just didn't chart at all, nor did any of the other singles on here. But Lemon Drop is like a crunk type too, and definitely has like a very crunk Lil Jon type beat on here. This kind of is a great stepping out song just for like a regular night out at a nightclub or something like that. And it's just a pretty good dance bop. This is definitely one that you could see some women pop lock and drop it and that type of stuff as far as that kind of goes. Just an easy kind of dance bop as far as that kind of goes with that sort of context. Just Baby Bash and Paul Wall do a great job on here. They've been on several songs, so they do have other songs if you like this one in particular. It's a pretty good highlight for that sort of thing. It's an easy kind of night out kind of hit. Great 1-2 punch with Busybody. I would have to say Lemon Drop and Busybody are just some good fly ones. The other two singles out of four on this album, I really didn't enjoy that much. Got to Get It and I Need Mo were both the other two singles. Didn't like these songs, really didn't like the beat at all, and Got to Get It was just kind of a poor, kind of clumsy, kind of plodding along production that just didn't have really any engagement towards it. I know that Paul Wall, when he talked about Fast Life, there are some songs on here that are not quite oriented for nightlife. They have kind of the concept of hustle and money getting and that type of stuff, where it's kind of not necessarily blue collar, but just kind of the heart of a hustler kind of mentality of just being on the grind type feeling. Paul Wall is a pretty thorough hustler, so that's kind of the concept that you get some of these, but this song just didn't do it for me at all. I just kind of feel like it just didn't have any sort of motivation type aspect of being compelling and making you want to go out there and get money. It was just a poor rendition of that. And then I Need Mo is a little bit more of a sparkly song, but not quite nearly good enough to be a good beat on here. It's definitely not a song I recommend. It's definitely not a song I recommend, but it has a nice hook by Kobe. Kobe has done a hook for Eminem and folks like that. He's done some other hooks. You can see him around, especially around the late 2000s, early 2010s and stuff, but this was just not one I could work with. I mean, it was trying to be like more of like a motivator type tune, but there are some better ones on here. I feel like 100 and I Grind are just better examples of some of the hustle songs on here. 100 and I Grind are some better examples of some hustle songs on here. It's just kind of strange that Paul Wall, with such adamant grind and such good mentality for stepping out and getting his money and that type of stuff, just didn't have a better translation of getting these songs kind of capped off, because it's just odd, especially in like singles. I just don't know why these songs were released as singles when they just did such a poor job of trying to get like the money on the table and get the motivation kind of happening. This was not a good example of this. I feel like there probably were better songs. I definitely think 100 would have been a better choice. I Grind would have been a better choice. This something in that kind of pitch that could have had a better vibe as far as getting these kind of cutting the aspect down the middle as far as having the work songs and the play songs, but the work songs just did not do really much justice at all. And that's just kind of the thing. But so to talk about the rest of this album, to talk about the rest of the songs on this album, there's 13 songs on here, and I wound up recommending to you 8.5. So those 8.5 songs I would recommend would be Busybody, Lemon Drop, Fly, Pop One of These, I'm Clean, Something Like a Pimp, I Grind, and 100. And then the almost song I'm kind of on the fence about is Pressing the Buttons. So very much another immediate highlight on this album is Fly, and this song has also Young Jock and Gorilla Zoe on here. I kind of like that Paul Wall would get cats in pairs on this album. He does that a couple of times. Where Pressing Them Buttons, he gets Lil Kiki and Trey the Truth. Something Like a Pimp, he gets Tech Nine and Chris Calico. Fly, he gets Young Jock and Baby Bash. And Busybody, he gets Webby and Mouse. It's too bad it wasn't Lil Boozy instead, but it's still a good cat from like the Trill ENT camp. So that's definitely the concept. He gets these cats in pairs, which I definitely felt like was a pretty Fly thing to do. But Fly is a very nice one. Fly is just a definite kind of Southern Smoke kind of cut. Definitely has that kind of hype energy. It's just a great synthy beat, and it has some good bottle popping and festive kind of feel towards it. It's just an overall, probably one of the best beats on this album. This is just a very jivey, kind of swagged out kind of song. All three of the lyricists on this song do a great job. Young Jock sounds perfect on this sort of song. It's a great highlight for him. And Gorilla Zoe does a great job on here too. I need to start reviewing some of his music. They just fit in with this song perfect, and Paul Wall does a good job on here. Just a great kind of real good timing of a song, just an easy kind of highlight, just great beat and stuff. Pop one of these with Too Short, and Pop one of these with Too Short, Skinhead Rob and the Federation. It's just a great slinky, slurred out kind of highlight. It's a great song to turn up to, and it's just a stock hit for some jive and that type of stuff. Just an easy kind of bop. It's talking about popping pills on the song, obviously, but you get the concept that this can be a great drinking beers kind of song and just getting crunk song overall. It's just got a very kind of slurred out and kind of drugged-esque kind of tone towards it. It's just an easy kind of one. It's just, I would definitely say that some of these have a great amount of jive for just. I would definitely kind of say that Pop one of these along with Fly and Lemon Drop are some great blurred out kind of songs just to kind of get crunk to and just have an easy kind of drugged out kind of night. Not in the sense of just, wholesomely applauding drug use, but just kind of the concept of having a decent time for just a good Friday, Saturday night with just some easy kind of kickback kind of energy as far as that kind of goes. Just a great highlight of one. Paul Wall was definitely a crazed kind of Paul Wall was definitely a pretty crazed party animal in some of these songs. Definitely shows his wild side. I'm Clean's a pretty good highlight. This is like a very slow cruise kind of hit. This is one of those Texas tunes where you're just kind of in a Cadillac or a nice slow creep kind of vehicle and that type of stuff. Just laid back, sunglasses on, Lokes on, that type of stuff. Just kind of easy, kind of nice track for some druggy evening commute, I would have to say. And it's just a vintage kind of Texas bop. Really sounds like something that UGK would do, Mike Jones, Slim Thug would do, those typecasts. It's very much Texas kind of oriented. This takes you back to like that Houston movement that they had throughout the mid and late 2000s and such. Just an easy kind of highlight, just an easy kind of slow cruise kind of song. It's a overall great hit for that sort of thing. And Zero has an excellent hook on here. It's just a great one for that sort of concept. This real kind of breezy, kind of just slurred out kind of music. Something like a Pimp with Tech Nine and Chris Calco is a nice highlight just because not a lot of folks are really getting Tech Nine for features outside of the strange music kind of camp. So this is a great song to hear Tech Nine on to kind of get him out of his normal conduct as far as that kind of goes. It's a very groggy kind of blurred type beat. This very much dreary kind of evening cut, I feel like, but it's just a great song for like a Waffle House trip or something like that. Is those kind of vibes where you're just a little bit slurred out and kind of feeling it a little bit, but you still want to go out and about and do some stuff. This is a great song to kind of get ready to go to Waffle House or maybe just got home. Just kind of the concept of just going a few places, going to like, going to IHOP, some of those 24-hour type restaurants and those type places just for an easy kind of time. And just kind of, it's a ladies track, man. It's definitely the concept. It's just a ladies track of just kind of appreciating the sights and just kind of ruminating. And it's a ladies track just for kind of sprawled out and just kind of oozing with personality as far as that kind of goes. I mean, Paul Wall kind of has some swag songs on here. So swag was pretty popular in like the late 2000s, and Paul Wall translated that pretty good. It's just a good concept of getting some of these swagged out songs. It's not often that you think of swag with Tech Nine and Chris Calico just because they were from a different kind of patch of area as far as that kind of went. But it's a good concept of getting like a pretty swagged out, kind of slurred out kind of song as far as that kind of goes. Definitely some Waffle House fare. I Grind is a great hustle cut. This is some morning and day commute kind of song. It's a hustle song about getting to it, and it's just a good motivator with the great hook. Definitely feel like this is one of the better songs compared to like Gotta Get It and I Need Mo. This is just a very overall more effectual version of some of this. This is the sort of stuff, I mean, the hook is just so sparky and kind of electrifying. I feel like this is the sort of concept that this would be a lot more of a better execution to kind of have for like a single as far as that kind of goes. It's just an easy kind of one to get up on the grind, go out and get money, even if it's 7:30 in the morning or 5:30 in the morning. Even I would have to say this is just some good overall tone to kind of get things going. I think that's what was Paul Wall's goal on this album, is just to kind of get some folks to get out and get moving and get motivated and stuff. But he just did not quite translate quite as well as like the whole album needed to. I feel like there's definitely some good party cuts on here, but in terms of like when it's time to get down to business, it just didn't quite have the execution quite as well. And it doesn't have like the blue collar kind of feel. So it's just kind of more of like the classic hustler mentality, but it just doesn't pull it off quite as wholesomely. But it's not to say this is a bad album, but 100's another example of a good hustle cut. This one has another excellent hook by Zero on here. Just a beautiful hook on here. It's a great ruminating cut with like an upbeat kind of feel. So it's ruminating, but it's not kind of mellow and moody and that type of stuff. It's just very upbeat, and it's just kind of a mini hustle song. Not a wholesome hustle song, but like enough of a mini hustle song about staying focused. That's more of like the primary type feel of it. It's just being focused and not getting detracted and that type of stuff. Just overall great feeling. And then a song I'm on the fence about is Pressing Them Buttons. This is very much a rowdy, kind of out on the town kind of cut. It's a tipsy song just for being out and about and cityscaping and just kind of appreciating like the flashy lights and going out to like sports games, sports bars, some of that type of stuff, as far as just kind of getting like some good jive in your system, just having some drinks in your system, smokage in your system, that type of stuff. But the beat is just not quite as enthralling. It's just kind of like a pounding kind of beat. It's kind of a very brassy, pounding kind of beat that this is just not nearly as catchy as it needs to be. I mean, it's this kind of one. It's supposed to be like a Texas kind of tune. I can tell that it just has like that Texas Houston kind of feel towards it, but the catchiness of it just needed to be up like a notch or two. I feel like it's probably to me like a 5 out of 10 beat, or like a 5.5 or a 6 at best. But I just could not quite get into the catchiness of the song enough. I mean, I think if I was still drinking beers and stuff, I could probably say if I had enough beers in my system, I'd probably like this song quite a bit, because it does do a good job of being rowdy and getting you energized, but it's just not quite compelling, just with the effectualness of how the emphasis of the beat kind of goes and stuff. It's a good party tune in some cases, but it just, when you are not having a good time already, it just doesn't do much to kind of get you overly over the top as far as that kind of goes. It's just kind of one where it's kind of hate it or love it kind of song, especially when you're not having some drinks in your system. So that's kind of the concept. So out of 13 songs, those are the 8.5 that I enjoyed. And the other two songs I didn't enjoy, apart from the two singles I talked about already, was just, and then the other two songs I didn't enjoy as much were just Daddy Wasn't Home, Mama Raised Me, and then Look at Me Now, which were just two more sluggish, kind of down tempo type tracks that just didn't have like a good pitch, apart from just being like homely type songs that just were kind of looking at things from a more relaxed angle and such. Just didn't quite have as much spark to me as far as that's concerned. I mean, I was trying to be a balanced album, but maybe just a different variation of a topic could have been something, because Tupac would do those sorts of songs, but he didn't always do them. I mean, sometimes it could be a song more so like, Shawty Wanna Be a Thug, or like Run the Streets or something like that, just with a differential kind of pitch, as far as maybe just a better, kind of more homely album cut. I just think the concept, sometimes these homely songs just don't hit in the context that you want them to. And when there's a short amount of songs, it kind of detracts, but not enough to horribly detract from the score. I just kind of look after it. So me liking 8.5 out of 13, basically I'm going to give this album, like an 8.5. I'm either going to give it an 8.5 or an 8.75 out of 10. I think I'll give this album an 8.5 out of 10, because I think giving it a 9 is a little bit pushing it, but I think an 8.5 out of 10 is good enough. The social score, though, I'll go ahead and give a 9 out of 10, just because it has a lot of highlights on here. There's more than half the album that's just chock full of great hits, and plus some good motivators in the certain context of it. But I feel like the good valve of some of these songs, like Busybody, Pop One of These, Lemon Drop, Fly, I'm Clean, Something Like a Pimp, Pressing Them Buttons in some cases. These are just some great parading kind of songs, just for a great night out and just an overall good festive time for more than a few weeks. I just would have to say this could be your loud pack for a good while, depending upon how you look at it. And this is kind of the concept. Just some overall great effectualness, I would have to say. But and it has some guests on here, so that's another concept. There's enough guests on here to be able to appreciate some of this, so it just has some good jive towards it. Maybe it could have used at least one or two more songs that could have had a little bit more jive towards it. But I think for the compact amount, getting 7 or 8 out of 13 that has like the more jivey kind of feel is pretty effectual as far as that kind of goes. But 9 social, 8.5 score. So in terms of the future, Paul Wall has been dropping quite a few projects, which I would have to say, which I do appreciate, but I just wonder, like, the low-key vibe of them. It's been a while since I've touched base with Paul Wall in terms of his newer stuff. I know he dropped like some mixtapes back in 2018 and 2019, but I'm just not overly sure as to what some of these past few projects have been about. So I'm going to have to get to some of these, but that's just kind of the concept about it. So